1977 at the Peter Wentz farmstead. And it was there that I learned how to warp the loom and how to weave on it, and everything developed after that, so that this was something that was more or less a lost art, although I traced it back for centuries. And what we have here are three different style looms. We have the knee loom, which is held between the knees. Then we have the box loom, or the table loom that resembles a box. And then we have the standing looms that's really a box loom on legs. So first of all, I think we'll talk about the knee loom. Here we have the knee loom, which is curved so that it fits between the knees. However, these used to be called lap looms, but in recent years there have been looms developed that lay across the lap. And so I've referred to it as the knee loom because this is held between the knees. The back part, which is has the long warp ends attached to a hook or a doorknob or something to get tension. And then you do your weaving in the front part of the loom, and so that you have your one shed would be a lower shed, meaning you separate one group of thread from the other, and then you raise it above the center row of eyelets to form the second shed. Now this is a little difficult to demonstrate on the loom because it's not being attached, but this is an example of a early 19th century knee loom. Here you have an example of a table loom. However, it's much larger than what most table looms are, but it's set on legs. And in this case, you have no treadles, but you form the first shed by raising your warp ends or lowering them. And you have a break, which is essential. And here you have one shed. You separate one group of yarn from the other and you pass your shuttle through. Now you form your next shed. You separate this group from the one below it and you come back in the opposite direction. So what you're doing is lowering below the center row of eyelets, passing your shuttle through, raising it above the center row of eyelets, passing your shuttle in the opposite direction. And it's important that you pull it straight across. You don't want to pull it down at an angle because then you get your warp ends at an angle. You want to pull it straight across. And so you continue doing this until you have no more yarn remaining. Now, it's important that you get a good even edge along your two sides of your tape. Here you have one shed because you're separating one group of yarn from the other. To change that shed, as I depress the pedal, the heddle moves up and reverses the shed, and you go back in the opposite direction. So you'll be coming through this direction. So here would be one shed, pulling it across. Then here would be the second shed. So you just keep weaving back and forth. This one has a single heddle. Now the next loom has two heddles. Now on this one you have two heddles. Here's one heddle and here's the other. You have the reel to put the ends on, and here's your reel to hold the finished tape. And in this one you'd have one foot and one pedal, and you have a shed. You separate one group of thread from the other. Pass your shuttle through the shed. Now you depress the right treadle, forms a new shed, and you go back in the opposite direction. So each time you alternate from side to side, changing your shed each time. Now if you forget and not to change your shed, all that happens is it comes out. So this acts as a locking mechanism also, because as you weave through, now as I depress my treadle, my yarn is coming through here. but there's no way that I can take it out except going back and forth. So here we have the double heddle. This loom came out of the Moravian community in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, and it is quite an interesting piece. The legs are turned. It has your reel that you would take up your finish tape on. Here you have your break, and here you have a break, so that this one operates this reel, and this one operates this reel. And so this is an interesting piece. It's very old. It's 18th century. Now this one is replicated from the previous one. It has one treadle, and so here's one shed, and you just remove your foot from the treadle and you form the second shed. So now here's one shed. Oops. Here's one shed. Now you raise it to form the second shed. All these looms have 18th century warp on them. So you're just weaving back and forth. Again, you pull straight across, and there's no need to beat, because what you're doing is actually pulling the weft thread, the shuttle thread, back against what you just previously pulled to form the shed, and that acts as a beater, because you're not weaving a large piece of fabric, 22 inches in width. You're just weaving a narrow band, a narrow tape, half an inch. So as long as you open your shed by passing your shuttle through, pulling back on your weft and pulling it through, gives you a nice good piece of tape. It has a reel rather than a roller. You have a peg going across to act as a brake, and then you do your weaving in the front of the loom. And here's one shed, passing your shuttle to the left, raising above the center row of eyelets, and passing the second shuttle to the right. So each time it goes below the center row of, eyelets, pass your shuttle in one direction, containing the weft, lift it up, pass in the opposite direction, again pulling it straight across. I like to hold my work right after I've gone through and formed the shed, rather than hold it down here. I just feel that I have more control by holding it close to what I'm weaving. So on this loom, I can usually weave 18 to 20 inches in an hour, whereas the standing loom with the legs, I can usually weave a yard in an hour. So you just raise and lower. All these looms have 18th century patterns on it. This one has two bleached coming through the center, so it gives you a solid line. Through each one of the eyelets is your brown, and through each one of the slits is your blue. And of course, it's the yarn in the slits that moves up above the row of eyelets or below the row of eyelets, forming your shed each time. So we just raise and lower below the center row of eyelets, alternating each time. Now, if I had brown on one side, then two of the same color in the center, and then blue in this side, have brown down here and blue over here, that would give me a checkerboard, because you have to throw it into another sequence. Otherwise, if you did not have the two of the same color coming down through the center, you would have the same thing as you have here. All one color coming through the outlet, another color coming through the slit. Is that clear?